Your review is now loading.
Welcome to Anime Review. Slowly! Am I internet famous yet? "2006, the year that time forgot." I've heard a lot of people say that 2007 was one of the best years for anime, but I'd assert that 2006 was equally as good. We got some real modern classics like Code Geass, Death Note, and Black Lagoon, not to mention cult hits like Higurashi, Hellgirl, and Welcome to the NHK. And with all of these titles coming out in the same year, it is entirely possible that a secret gem may have slipped through the cracks. So let's take a trip back in time to the 2000s and see if Ergo Proxy is that gem. Wait, hold up. Now I'm ready. Ergo Proxy was made by the recently bankrupt studio Manglobe, which is really a shame because they produced some well-received work, like Deadman Wonderland, Samurai Champloo, and most recently, Gangsta. Our story is set in a postmodern dome city called Romdo, where technology has advanced to the point of allowing citizens to have their own robo-slaves called auto-raves. These auto-slaves can do everything from keeping you company to protecting you, and they can even scan your body for emotional instability. Cut to our main character, Raelle Maire, an inspector with the Intelligence Bureau who hunts down threats for the government with the help of her auto-slave, Iggy. Finally, I've been waiting for this. You. What are you doing here? I've been following you from review to review, just waiting for you to review Psycho-Pass 2 so I could finish what I started. You remember, back in your Psycho-Pass 1 review? One you can click right here in the sanitation if you haven't seen it yet. No, yeah, sure, that's fine. We didn't need that fourth wall anyways. Oh, where you're going, you won't need it.
Please aim carefully and fire when ready.
Look, this isn't even a Psycho-Pass review. This is Ergo Proxy. Robots that can scan your emotional state, a postmodern technologically advanced city, inspectors that hunt bad guys. Either you're lying or someone owes Gen Urobuchi some royalty fees. Actually, Ergo Proxy came out first, so if anybody owes royalty fees, it's Urobuchi. So, are you planning on reviewing Psycho-Pass 2? Yeah, eventually. Alright, kill you then. Alright, wait, what? We follow Raelle, she inspects stuff, and find out pretty quickly that she's not just any inspector, but the granddaughter of the main man in charge of Romdo, Donov Maire, or as I like to call him, Old Man Bane. Under the orders of him and his 4 statue friends, Raelle is tasked with things like checking on the status of immigrants trying to get into the city, and inspecting a strange virus called Cogito, which seems to be giving auto-raves autonomy, and allowing them to do things like act out violently and pray. While following up on a lead for the Code Geass virus, Raelle runs into a couple of infected auto-raves and a mysterious shadow figure that bolts from the scene. Going against direct orders, she decides to look into the shadow figure and heads home only to discover that the shadow figure has already looked into her as he drops by and thumbs her mouth, revealing himself to be Evil Ryu with a hollow stuck to his face. But that's not the end of the nightmare as here comes a new challenger! And fights with Evil Ryu until the two leave. Feeling the appropriate amount of mental scarring, Raelle reports the incident to the Bureau and wakes up the next morning only to discover that a government cover-up has taken place as her closest allies try to convince her that she imagined the mouth thumbing. Having seen enough neo-noir thrillers to know where this is going, Raelle continues to search for answers, coming across an immigrant that she had interviewed by the name of Vincent Law, who seems to somehow be connected to both the Cogito virus and the shadow figures. She decides to try and make contact with him, beginning a deadly cat and mouse game between her, Vincent, the Shadows, and her own government. And that is where our story begins. Are you confused yet? Cause that's just episode 3. Okay, let's sort through this fuckshit stack by first talking about the animation. Right off the bat, I gotta say, I love it. The classic neo-noir style, fluid action, intense detail, and above all else, atmosphere seem to pay homage to some of my favorite movies of all time, like Blade Runner, Equilibrium, Dark City, and the only Matrix movie ever made. Or at least it did in the first half of the series. As the show progresses, it becomes seemingly apparent that the bulk of its budget was spent in the first few episodes, with the fights becoming less frequent and the detail becoming less, well, detailed. Now that's not to say that the show's animation is bad in the latter half, but it definitely seems like they used the bulk of their budget up front in order to get viewers' attention, hoping that the characters and story would keep them invested. But here's the thing about that for me. It worked. The atmosphere is so expertly executed and the style is so perfect that I don't care if the fight scenes have to take a dip, because it's not about the fights, it's about the emotion and the world. And on those notes, the animation is pitch perfect. I mean, just by looking at the rooms on Rondau, you can tell without any explanation that this place is a very sterile, totalitarian, futuristic city. It looks like it was lifted straight out of a George Orwell novel. Likewise, outside of the dome cities, the world is barren and in ruin, covered by a thick carpet of clouds that shrouds the sky. You know what happened to this world just by looking at it. They don't need to tell you that something cataclysmic happened, because they're showing you it. That is atmosphere. That is the very act of showing and not telling. That is art. When we get to the sound, I feel like it's almost the flip side of the animation. Where the animation was beautiful with a few missteps, the sound is problematic with a few moments of genius. Let's start with the good. First off, I can't help but love this intro. Maybe it's the nostalgic side of me, but anything that sounds like late 90s or early 2000s rock just strikes a chord with me, and that is exactly what this song is. Its style, mixed with the cerebral imagery accompanying it, gives me the strongest nostalgia boner since finding out that Samurai Jack is back. Back from the past. Samurai Jack. It's really reminiscent to me of something like the X-Files or Charmed, and while I realize that this particular style of intro might not be for everyone, let me liken it to something less than 2 decades old so you can get an idea of why I love it. Serial Experiments Lain. They both have the stylized imagery, the retro sounds, and the saturated colors, so if you dug Lane's intro, you're probably gonna dig this. The end theme also has a very 90s feel to it, only less pop rock and more alternative, like Radiohead. Actually, that sounds a lot like Radiohead. Is that Radiohead? Holy shit, that's Radiohead! Now, while the song is great, I have to say that the visuals accompanying it are slightly less so. Basically, it's scrolling text over clouds. That's it. The rest of the OST is also pretty damn good in my opinion, with most of it either sounding incredibly ethereal or industrial, both of which are perfect sounds to accompany the tone. So if the music is so good, how can the sound be problematic, I hear you typing fervently in the comments? Well, that brings us to the voice acting. Now don't get me wrong, the voice acting isn't all bad, with Rael's actress doing a good job of matching the character, and the voice actors for Iggy and Pino, a childlike auto-rave that Rael encounters later on, being the two most memorable parts of the cast, both delivering on emotion and personality that I feel was spot on. But that's also kind of the problem. Our two most memorable characters in terms of raw acting are both robots. The humans all kind of feel generic, or worse, totally awkward. Like Vincent, whose voice changes so often that I thought he was going back and forth through puberty throughout the entire series. Even Rael's voice actress, who did an overall good job, seemed to fall short whenever something big or emotional was happening. It was like the director told all the actors playing humans that they were playing robots, and all the actors playing robots that they were playing humans, but maybe that was the intent, I don't know. But more problematic than any of the acting or the weird voice changing was the syncing. Holy reboot, did this show not know how to sync voices? More times than I care to remember, I would be watching Rael and wonder if she was talking to herself, or to another character, or to God, or to me, or if she was just an elaborate puppet and this whole thing was a Jeff Dunham special, because there were several scenes where her voice was making sounds, but her lips hadn't gotten the note. I honestly thought the first time I saw it that it was just some kind of inner monologue that she was having, but if that's the case, they sure as hell didn't do a good job of showing it, because there was no close-up, no echo effect, no cue, visual, audible, or otherwise, to indicate that she wasn't just suddenly telepathically projecting her thoughts into the air for all to hear. Now, while Rael's dub might have its issues, that doesn't mean that the character herself does. She is a really strong lead for this series, able to throw down when it's necessary, and carry the first half of the series by being both intelligent and interesting. Take this scene, for example, where she's searching for Vincent. She's talking to him on the phone and for whatever reason can't just track it, so what does she do? She hears 2 trains in the background and immediately goes to a computer to search the subway and see where 2 trains are currently passing one another. There's no dialogue or exposition that over-explains what she's doing like you would see in other shows, like Death Note.
I'll take a potato chip and eat it.
For instance. She hears a thing, does a thing, and we follow it all seamlessly because, again, the series is showing us and not telling us what is happening. It goes to explain that she is intelligent, that this technology exists, and it furthers the plot, all without a single word. Unlike a character like, let's say, Yoko, Raelle is memorable for who she is and not how she looks, although, aesthetically, her design was pretty awesome. Back in 2000, when Amy Lee used it for Evanescence's Fallen album. And if you snatch off the R's from Raelle's name and switch around a few letters, conspiracy. Next up, we have Vincent Law, an immigrant presumably from the Northern Air Temple with Maria Ross hair and a mean case of Brock eyes. Okay, he's actually from a place called Mosk, but look at what he's wearing. I refuse to believe that that man cannot bend air. Anyways, as an immigrant, Vincent is looked down on by pretty much everyone and works as an auto-rape technician for the citizens of Ramdau in order to gain his own citizenship. Or at least he did until the mouth-thumbing shadow monsters start chasing after him and the government decides that everything is his fault and starts going after his ass too. Now Vincent is our flip side to Raelle. He's not looking for trouble or bored with his life. He just wants to live and let live. But trouble, much to his constant horror, comes looking for him. At first I thought of him as one of those pathetic types, you know, the ones always running away and crying whenever life throws something at them. Okay, I'm making an oath, from here on out, no more comparing bitch characters to Shinji. That joke has run its course, it's over. Okay, one more time. Okay, there, it's over now, done. And to be honest, it's not even really a fair comparison. I mean, sure, Vincent doesn't want to be in the middle of all of this, but at least he tries to fight back and he does a pretty damn good job of it for a lowly auto-rape technician. I mean, look at this guy. He couldn't fight off hunger, much less half of the crap thrown at him. He really is the flip side to Raelle. While she goes out looking for trouble and knows how to handle herself, this guy just wants to relax and not die. But it seems like everything wants him dead for no apparent reason. It really makes for an interesting dynamic when the two finally do meet up. Next up we have Iggy and Pino. Now I'm going to be talking about these two together because they serve similar purposes. Iggy, like I mentioned before, is Raelle's auto-rave. He's basically a butler slash partner that helps Raelle out however she needs him to. Now I really dig this character because while he's a soulless auto-rave, and by that I mean he's not infected with Cogito virus, he still manages to somehow be one of the most likable characters in the entire show. He might not actually be capable of caring about anyone, but you wouldn't be able to tell by his actions. He's kind of Raelle's heart in the series, the only person or thing that she softens up around or trusts. He's always there when she needs him and is a much needed source of optimism in a world that has none. Pino, on the other hand, is an infected auto-rave that Vincent was trying to fix before shit went to shit. Throughout his journey, she follows him around mostly because she has nowhere else to go and kind of keeps him tethered to this world. I seriously think without her around, the guy would have ate a bullet by episode 3. The thing about her character is that she was programmed to be a companion for a family that couldn't have children. That, mixed with the soul that she got from the Cogito virus, basically makes her a child character. Normally, I would hate that. I always kind of feel like children are put into things to pull the heartstrings like satanic harp players, but Pino is not. She's actually useful throughout the course of the show, and not because of any special auto-rape bullshit or any Deus Ex Machina, literally, in this case, MacGuffins. She's useful because of who she is, her outlook, her demeanor. She provides mental stability to her friends and even goes on a few adventures of her own that totally fit with the character. Anime creators, take notes. This is how you write a child character. Next up, I'm going to talk about the rest of the characters, but I'm not going to specify any of them as good or bad, mostly because this show is so morally gray that a colorblind Quentin Tarantino couldn't top it with 3 Pulp Fiction sequels. First off, we have Old Man Bane and the Rockettes. Now, Father Time over here is Raelle's grandfather and the main man in charge of Ramdau. He seems to be running it from his closed-off bubble room, which is kind of hard to decipher because he doesn't speak. Ever. Although his statues do, because sense. This makes none. I know, they're his auto-raves and he's talking through them. I get it, I understand, I watched it too, but it's a joke, people. It's a joke. Still doesn't make sense. Secondly, there's Raoul. He's the head of the Intelligence Bureau, which makes him Raelle's boss, and also the father/owner of Pino. He's basically the yes-man to Raelle's grandfather and the statues, but he also has his own goal and endgame that he's trying to achieve. Then there's Daedalus, or Dr. Bad Touch. This guy is kind of the government's own personal Krieger and acts as the physician/technician for humans and auto-raves. He's also Raelle's closest human friend in the series. Now, while he's definitely helpful and probably the most intelligent character in a series full of hyper-intelligent characters, I just can't seem to get past the fact that he looks like the reason restraining orders were invented. The Outsiders are a group of individuals who live outside of the protection of the Dome Cities, and while they're probably called something else, I like the sound of Outsiders, so I'm sticking with it. Like I said, these guys live outside of the Dome City and scrape together what they can out of the trash in order to survive. Now, while most of these characters are very much background noise to the rest of the series, there are three that matter. Those being Hoodie, Quinn, and Timothy. Hoodie runs the commune where they live and seems to be or have been a doctor at some point. Possibly. Timothy is Quinn's son and Pino's best friend, who teaches her a lot about being a human once she begins to understand that she has a soul. And lastly, Quinn is a boss. For a very secondary character, she stands out drastically in the series, and much like Raelle, is just a fantastic depiction of a strong female in anime. And lastly, we have the mouth-thumbing Shadow Nightmares, or as they're called in the series, Proxies. These guys are shrouded in all kinds of mystery and seem almost completely erratic, from showing up on Raelle's doorstep to chasing down Vincent for apparently no reason to just killing people for funsies. They are the show's big question, the variable. The plot is pretty much exactly what you would expect. Raelle goes after Vincent and the truth, the government plays their game, Raelle plays along, but has his own motives, and we pretty much watch everyone's plot unfold with the truth, which, when you put it that way, sounds pretty damn cliche. But the overarching plot isn't what makes this show interesting, because yeah, it is kind of generic, but so is this picture until you look at it from a different perspective, and that is what this entire show is about. Perspective. How we see the world, how the characters see the world, how the characters see each other. Speaking of plot, let's get to that. First off, the show's pacing is all over the place. In fact, it might be some of the worst pacing I've seen in a very, very long time. We're just face slammed into the plot for the first 2 to 3 episodes. Then for the next 4 or so, it moves at a snail's pace, and I get that they had to start off strong and then slowly unravel the plot, but these episodes in particular only get across a very small amount of what's actually going on, and they drag until you're on your knees next to the auto raves just praying for something to happen. Then it does! Very suddenly, so suddenly in fact that I had to watch some episodes twice to catch what was going on. This show is so bad at pacing itself and giving us information at a proper rate that they literally have a semi-filler game show episode in the middle just to info dump everything on us. So that makes it bad, right? Well, not exactly. See, while the first half had some pacing issues, the second half was kind of nice. I appreciated that they found innovative and interesting ways to display the information that actually fit with the world. Like the game show episode. You'd think that it would feel clunky and unnatural, but in all honesty, this is where the show actually got fun for me. There's a good stretch of episodes that don't really expand the overall plot, but they do help give us more information on it. And while we might not be progressing, we are learning, and they use these episodes to also expand the show's main focus, its characters' perspectives. One example of this, and probably my favorite, is episode 16. Are you ready for this? Nothing happens. It's just our main characters sitting on an airship, waiting for the wind to come. This episode is straight up genius. Throughout it, we follow Raelle's perspective, which is good since the episode is followed by episodes that revolve around Vincent and Pino's perspective. And this episode basically just shows them doing nothing, just living. It shows what Raelle actually thinks of them, and it shows her growing. We have no idea how long they were just stuck there, waiting, but we do know it must have been a while, and that is all the information we need to understand why Raelle starts to think differently, how her perspective changes. And even though it's shown from Raelle's perspective, it doesn't skimp on Vincent or Pino either. It shows Pino's innocence and her willingness to please others, and even emulate those she cares for. And it shows Vincent's kindness, and even some of his lackadaisicalness.
Am I supposed to know how to make the wind start blowing?
Yes, that is exactly what I expect you to do. You are an airbender. This episode is easily my favorite. It is a perfect example of how to break up tension in your series by having realistic characters act realistically, as opposed to the oh so often seen fan service episode like we got in Gurren, every anime ever. Sadly, however, I do have to say that through all of the amazing things that this show built up in its first 22 episodes, I did feel a little gypped on the ending. Now make no mistake, although the overall plot may be a bit simplistic, this show aims to fuck minds. It is totally in the same vein as something like Ava or Serial Experiments Lain. It means to make you think. And it does. Most mindfuck animes end with questions like, what did it all mean? What was the overlying theme, or what was it trying to say? Ergo Proxy ends with questions too, but they're less existential or philosophical and more unresolved plot points. It really feels like it ended on less of a series finale and more of a season finale. That, coupled with the, in my opinion, somewhat cliche climax, really makes the ending feel like a cop-out. Look, I'm not one of those reviewers that thinks the ending is paramount, but I do think the ending is important, just not as important as the journey. It seems to me that most people when watching a show are mostly in it to complete it, to add it to their resume of watched shows, and that kind of thinking causes the ending to have much more of an impact on their overall thoughts, because that's what they've been building up to in their heads, what they've been trudging through the rest of the show for. It's their end goal. But to me, a series or movie or book shouldn't be an end goal. It should be a journey.
Life is often spoken of as a journey.
So to completely disregard this show because I didn't like the ending would be like disregarding the first 4 seasons of Dexter just because its ending was crap. Sure, it might have ended on a weak note, but that does not undo everything that they built on the road to getting there. Personally, I love the journey, and I honestly think that episode 16 alone is enough to recommend this series, because to me, it may be one of the best episodes of any anime ever. This show, more than anything, is a product of its time. The neo-noir style was incredibly popular in American culture at the time. The music is appropriate and enjoyable, and even Riel's character design is a tribute to the era. The entire show bases itself around the late 90s, early 2000s style that I personally love, but if you don't, then you might not enjoy it as much as I did. And that's it for me, guys. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. If you want to see more, subscribe. And I have a bit of a favor to ask. You see, WatchMojo's doing another top 10 anime reviewers poll, and I'm on it, so I'd really appreciate the vote. If you guys are interested in giving me an early Christmas present, you can go down to the description below and vote for me. Or, you know, any other reviewer that you like. You can even add reviewers if you want. Just make sure to vote up the poll itself, because that way it gets noticed. Thanks for watching, guys, and thanks for voting. Merry Christmas.
I am mad scientist. It's so cool, son of a bitch.